Good evening from Drive Mode Show, folks. I'm James Gilboy, and this week I've been driving the oldest of the three entry-level electric hatchbacks on sale in America today, the Chevrolet Bolt. So GM actually just upgraded this car for the 2020 model year. They boosted its battery size by 10%, taking it from 60 to 66 kilowatt hours. That gives it another 21 miles of range for a total of 259. That's EPA range, by the way, but my rants on test protocols can be saved for another time. For now, I'm going to compare this Chevy to its two closest competitors, the Nissan Leaf and the Mini Cooper SE, both of which I've driven. Size-wise, the Bolt is in the middle of the two. So on price and power, it's a bit more closely matched to the Leaf Plus. When it comes to range, though, the Bolt has the Leaf beat by 32 miles. The Leaf is 226 miles, if memory serves. So on specs alone, the Bolt's got the edge, but it loses a little bit of ground when you compare the interiors of the two cars at similar price points. Now, that's not to say I don't like the Bolt's interior. I do, because it's a little futuristic in the way that downtown Detroit is these days. It's also pretty well equipped for winter drives in Michigan. You know, it's got a heated steering wheel, seats, all 5 seats, by the way, not just the front row. Climate control is, well, it's good, but it's admittedly on the budget end. It's a single zone system only, which is kind of rare in cars that 44 grand delivered. And seat materials aren't anything that'll really impress a date's parents. It's leather appointed, meaning it's not all leather. But there is some solid tech in here, mostly starting with the neat little rear view mirror. Flip it and it'll switch to a great little rear view screen with a pretty wide field of view. It'll show you your 5 and 7 o'clock, and honestly, that's a nice step up from just the standard mirror. There's passive safety tech, like everything these days. There's an aux input down here, 2 USB ports up front, 2 in back, and an Apple and Android compatible infotainment system that's one of the better ones I've used. The UI is simple and easy to use. The design's attractive. The screen's responsive, and I'm a big fan of the audio in this car too. Admittedly, it doesn't all come up roses, because being a Chevy, there's still cheap plastic everywhere in here. I also don't love this center console. The bin is a little bit narrow for bulky items you want to keep out of sight, like my camera that I'm going to use to photograph this thing in a few minutes. Cup holders are on the small side for my gigantic water bottles. Those seats, again, that leather appointment, emphasis on those air quotes, really doesn't make them feel as premium as a comparable Nissan Leaf Plus like the SV or the SL. And for the ergonomics, they feel kind of tailored for somebody who's smaller than me, and I'm an average height American male. Those problems are even worse in the back seat. There's not a lot of headroom in the side seats. And actually, now that my brain's back there, I think the cargo area floor is maybe a little flimsy. You wouldn't really want to stow something heavy back there. But let me bring the focus back to the middle of the car, where my head is. No, literally, you sit so far back in this thing that your head is practically in the middle of the car. It's really weird. Also, it was kind of weird is the steering. I like the weight, but it doesn't really communicate what the tires are doing. And that's kind of something you want to know when the tires are this prone to squealing. Yes, low rolling resistance tires are part of what gives the Bolt its, really incomparable range, but they also make it handle pretty poorly. And the suspension feels like it's maybe designed for some slightly stickier rubber. And as for that suspension, it rides okay. But between those hard tires, the stiff springs, I guess, and honestly, like, really pretty shockingly grabby brakes, ugh. I don't think this would make all that great a winter car. It's just a little too twitchy, stiff, easy to upset. But on the plus side, it does have electric throttle response going for it. Now, if you've never driven an electric car, It's super smooth, almost unnoticeable for people who get car sick easily, but it still has this really great responsive snap when you floor it. It's really great for highway passing. Unfortunately though, the Bolt's throttle also has something I really don't like, and that's a lack of liftoff regeneration compared to the Mini SE and the Nissan Leaf. Both of those have this sort of one pedal mode where they amp up the regenerative braking, which recharges the battery, but also makes them largely drivable with just your right foot. Well, I mean, you're always driving with your right foot, but just the gas pedal. The Bolt really doesn't have that. You lift off and it kind of coasts. It regenerates a little bit, but it feels a lot more like a conventional car. And yet, conventional, more importantly, approachable, is what Chevy's probably shooting for with the Bolt. If you're like me and you like an electric car just as much as one that runs on distilled dinosaurs, you might not find much to love in the Bolt. But if you're on the fence about going electric and you just want something familiar, an experience that's like all the other cars you've ever driven, you don't need to learn something new except maybe how to hook up that CCS charge port. The Bolt, dear viewer, might be the electric car